Hi Not Board Gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video we are going to be looking at a game where Season 3 is currently on Kickstarter. It's already massively funded. And of course the game, as you can see in front of me, is the utterly fantastic, in my opinion, Final Girl series. Now, I have everything so far for Final Girl. I backed Series 1, which is here. I backed, which is here. I backed Series 2, which is here. I've got all of the additional add-ons, the secret boxes, the vignettes, etc. I have absolutely everything. But the reason for the video is to have a look at 5 reasons why, or why not, this game may be for you. Are you considering backing Final Girl? Then hopefully I'm gonna, the video will help you kind of make your mind up on that. Now, as you can see, as a Final Girl fan, I have my Final Girl t-shirt. The full disclosure, this was given to me by Porfirio from Ryder Games at Gen Con, but I have bought all of the game, game content so far myself, and I have already backed Series 3, so you can tell that I do love the game. So I'm not going to go into kind of gameplay too much about how it works, etc., but we're going to discuss 5 reasons why or why not the game may be for you. Hopefully help you make a decision as to whether you want to back some or all of Final Girl that's currently on Kickstarter. The link is in the description below. So without much further ado, let's talk about point number 1, why or why not this game may be for you. Does that sound right? That's what I'm going with. Point number 1 is going to be the theme. Now, I have said this many times on other videos, I'm a huge 80s horror film fan. I absolutely adore 80s horror films. My favourite thing to do some evenings when my wife's gone to bed and the kids have gone to bed is to settle down, pour myself a nice glass of whiskey and watch an 80s horror film. It absolutely, I don't know, as somebody born in 1970 whose teenage years were in the 80s and kind of in the birth of obviously the video generation as well, 80s horror films just absolutely strike a chord with me. Yes, they're cheesy, they're slashy, there's some terrible tropes in there, but I absolutely love 80s horror themes. So when Final Girl Series 1 came along, I knew I had to get Series 1 at the very least. You see, Final Girl is obviously based on the Hostage Negotiator series of games. It's similar style gameplay, but they've spun it and used Final Girl, and it is absolutely fantastic. It does take or pay homage to kind of all of the great 80s horror tropes. So you've got things like Nightmare on Maple Lane, which is obviously Freddy Krueger. You have The Haunting of Creech Manor, which is a poltergeist. You have the Happy Trails Horror, Happy Trails Horror, which is kind of like your classic Friday the 13th slasher, kind of camp counselor slashers. And in Series 2, you have things like Into the Void, which is kind of the alien one. You have Panic at Station 2891, which is The Thing, and various others, and same with Series 3 as well. You've got a Terminator one in Series 3. The theme absolutely strikes a chord, and I think, an overriding theme in all these 80s horror films was the Final Girl, the girl or the lady who kind of defeated the bad person, monster, bad guy, etc. at the end of it, and it nails it absolutely fantastically well. You can mix and match the various bad guys with the various locations that you've got. So maybe you want to play Freddy Krueger in space. Absolutely nothing stopping you doing that. It nails it so much. You get this feeling like you're in the final third of a film, like everything's rushing to its conclusion. You're trying to save people who you're not going to save them all, absolutely, and sometimes you won't save any of them at all and you'll die horribly. But you're trying to save people while you're also trying to defeat the big bad there as well. And it does that through using a series of cards, which I've got laid out on me, and you're going to buy cards effectively and kind of do, I want to call it deck construction, but it's not really, because any cards that you use go back into a discard pile, and you don't get to pick them the next round. You get to pick them the round after if you want to get them back into your hand. The key factor is time here, as it would be as well. You're always rushing in the Final Girls are always rushing in a film, and absolutely it nails that. You have a time mechanism which you spend time to use cards, and then how much time you got left at the end of your round gives you how much time you then get to buy. How much time you can use for buying other cards as well. You get to get items, etc. It's just absolutely fantastic. The mixing and matching of everything everything that you can do creates these wonderfully unique experiences. Not all of them work, but wonderfully unique experience. And as I say, it really nails that homage, that kind of the love letter it paints towards these wonderful, in my opinion, 80s horror films. You know, it's not gory by any stretch of the imagination, but gore is implied in the game, and that's absolutely here. Each bad guy works ever so slightly different. Each location works different. Each final girl, and there are a large number of final girls you can get for it, works slightly different as well, with different with a different item that you may well pick out for them to use. It nails that theme, that kind of tense final third of an 80s horror film. Absolutely fantastic. And if that speaks to you, then you know, you should really go and check this out. And if you're looking for kind of a complete history on 80s horror films, there are 3 documentaries you can watch called In Search of Darkness 1, 2 and 3. These are 4 and 5 hour documentaries, and they tell you almost about every single 80s horror film that you can imagine. It's just absolutely fantastic series of films. I've watched them a number of times. Yes, they are 4 and 5 hour long, and I put them on and watch them for an hour at a time, etc. And it's my go-to series of documentaries. And watching those videos, playing Final Girl, watching 80s horror films just really kind of captures that whole kind of 80s horror movie feel for me. So the theme, if that appeals to you, then that could be a really strong indicator of why you want to get this game. But why it may not be for you is the theme. Horror isn't for everybody. Some people just aren't interested in it. Some people, for personal or religious reasons, just don't want to be involved in anything that's got any kind of monsters or demons, ghosts, etc. in there. And that's absolutely fine. Look, it doesn't shy away from being a game that is inspired by horror movies and bad things happening to people. So, you know, I'm not saying that this game, well, I'm definitely saying that this game is probably not for a younger audience. You know, it is a pure solo game, of course it is, but, you know, I'm not saying, I won't say that this game is for a younger audience. There is implied gore, there is implied peril in here, and all of those things can absolutely dissuade some people from kind of latching onto that theme. Not everybody is a fan of horror, not everybody wants horror in their life. Some people are looking for a more, how can I put it, positive experience. And yes, this is positive at the end of it if you get to defeat the bad guy. But, you know, that implied horror, the settings, the various monsters and demons and ghosts, etc., mean that this game is not going to be for everybody. So if horror is not your thing for many, many reasons, then Final Girl, no matter what series it is, 1, 2 or 3, is not going to be for you. Okay, so point number 2 on why this game may or may not be for you is the sheer amount of content for it. Now, as I say, I've bought everything so far. I've backed Series 3, I've got the t-shirt, I've got the alternate miniatures for Series 1. There is an absolute ton of content already out for this game. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think it's 10. Is it 9 or 10? Existing, it's 10, yeah, 10 existing scenarios. So that's 10 locations you can choose, 10 bad guys you can have, and you can play them for the locations that they come with, or you can mix and match that. That is a huge amount of content already in existence. There are also things called vignettes which you can add into there as well, which change how you play the game as well. There are secret boxes, I'm not going to go into what's in them, that kind of have an impact on what game you're playing and how you're going to play it. There are additional dice that you can put in here. There are lore books and kind of final kill cards that you can integrate. You can play it in a campaign time structure if you want. There is so much content with this, various miniatures and cards and upgrades. I've got the neoprene player mats, you don't need them, but there's one for each season. There is a huge amount of content for this game. So much so that certainly when Series 3 comes out, is you could play it so many times and never have exactly the same game twice, purely because of how you're going to choose the cards and what happens to the bad guys and the events that come out, etc. There is a ton of content which just makes the fact that if you enjoy the game, you're going to love it even more. You know, For me, it's not a, I love the game, and it's not a game that I get out kind of weekly, but when I get it out, I will play 2 or 3 games, maybe even more, on the bounce, mixing and matching monsters, bad guys, scenarios, etc., and final girls, just to kind of hit that sweet spot. And that is really, really good, because it means that I can ensure that whatever mood I'm in for an 80s horror fix, then there's something within Series 1, Series 2, and the upcoming Series 3 that is going to scratch that particular need for me. Now, it obviously all looks fantastic as well, and you've got these, if you go for the kind of deluxeified options, you've got these wonderful storage where you can put everything in. And you've got, like, you know, looks like the old VHS here, and each one of these scenarios looks like a VHS movie that you would have seen on the shelf of a video store back in the 80s and 90s, etc. And all of that is absolutely fantastic. There's a place for everything in all this storage, and the sheer amount of content. It's a masterstroke by Ryder Games to make something not only play thematically, but also store thematically as well. So content-wise, you're not going to be stuck for anything 80s horror movie related when you get Series 1, 2 and 3 of Final Girl. So that's why it may work for you, is just the sheer amount of content. But why it may not work for you is the sheer amount of content. It can be quite daunting. Now, a lot of us as buyers, we sometimes not quite, well, it's not FOMO, but we become little bits of completionists, and we want to get everything for it. And it's not cheap. Individual items are cheap, but when you start kind of looking at an entire set that's got everything with it, with the mats and the storage solutions and all of the scenarios and all of the miniatures and all of the vignettes and all of the additions that go in there, it starts to rack up quite a lot. I think it's something like around about 160 quid for an entire season. Now, we've got 2 seasons out already. That means 3rd season on the way. That's a lot of money that you're racking up there. And that content can feel overwhelming as well at the same time, because, you know, some games kind of prosper by the fact that you lay it out and you play the game and you know how it's laid out. But because of how this works with the different kind of scenarios and the different monsters and different bad guys, etc., and different final girls and the vignettes, there's quite a lot of bits that you can add into a game, and it can feel overwhelming for people. You don't have to throw it all in at once, of course you don't, but it can feel slightly overwhelming, and I absolutely get that. Space can be a premium. You don't have to buy all of the stuff. As long as you've got the core set, you can buy the individual films or movies or whatever you want to call them. But even so, you know, I say a lot of us kind of go for a semi-completionist or completionist kind of thing with a lot of our board games, and it can become quite problematic. These take up a massive amount of space on my shelf. I've got these on display in my living room. I don't really have games in my living room, but they look so good that I have them on display in my living room. But again, if space is at a premium for you, and you know, you don't have to get all of the content. You can literally get the core box and 1 movie scenario, and you can play that over and over again if you wanted to. But it can be overwhelming. The sheer amount of content can be absolutely overwhelming. So if you want a game that's a bit more kind of streamlined in what it offers you, that doesn't have an overwhelming amount of choice for the amount of stuff that you can get for it, then, you know, Final Girl in its complete form with all 3 seasons may not be for you. However, if you kind of love the fact and you get on board with the gameplay and it scratches that itch for you, and you want to keep playing multiple different ways and playing around with scenarios and monsters, then absolutely the sheer amount of content that these guys AJ Porfirio and Evan Derrick have come up with for Final Girl is astounding, and they make it all fit into the theme of the game as well, which I think is really, really important. So that's point number 2 on why or why not Final Girl may not be for you. Now, let's look at point number 3, and that is going to be the gameplay. So gameplay at its core concept for Final Girl is relatively straightforward. If you've played Hostage Negotiator, you may well know exactly kind of how it plays. You have some cards, and you're going to start out with a deck of kind of zero time cost cards. So I think there's 6 of them. There we go, you can see some of them there. And you're going to use those cards to do everything that your character wants to do. That's going to be moving, that's going to be searching, that's going to be attacking, sprinting, planning, striking, improvising, healing, etc. All of those are going to be used. You're going to use your cards to do that, and all of them rely on a dice-based mechanic. You have these dice here. how much horror, or what the horror setting is on at any particular point in the game, is how many dice you're going to roll, and that can either increase or decrease based on what happens in the game and how the horror comes. And every card has got a number of kind of symbols on there. You can see the stars, and then something down at the bottom for no stars. And you're going to roll these dice and try and get stars. So you roll the number of dice that your horror says you can do, try and get stars on there. And if you get the prerequisite or the required number of stars, so here if you get on improvise, if I got 2 stars, said until this action phase ends, all 3s and 4s are successes, okay? Then if I get 1 star for the next horror roll only, all 3s and 4s are successes. And then if I get no stars, I move my time down, and also the horror goes up as well. And all of that is completely dice dependent, and that makes it a very dice heavy game. Now, I love an element of luck and chance in my games, so dice play in a game is really, really good for me. You combine that with the element of kind of, I say, kind of deck curation, but it's kind of instant deck curation, because generally most of the cards in your hand you're going to play on that turn. Any that you don't, you get to keep in your hand up to a maximum hand size, and then you're going to buy other cards to supplement your hand. So you've got to start forward planning. There's a large kind of tactical and not quite strategical, but tactical element in this, just planning for your next, not your next turn, but the turn after, about what you want to do 2 moves hence. And that works really, really well. It's very exciting rolling those dice, and it's very, very harsh as well, because each die only has kind of 1 success on there. It's got a couple of icons which allow you to kind of discard 2 cards to change a face into a success, and then it's got a couple of blanks on there. So the chances of you rolling a star is about 1/3 per dice. Okay, so 1 in 3, because it's got 2 stars on there, 1 in 3 per dice. So it can be quite hard and quite punishing, and that's kind of really fun as well. It adds to that tension. You're planning what you want to do. You're trying to get the right cards and the right dice combination to do the moves that you do. But like in everything, like in every 80s horror film, things come along to scupper your plans, and those dice rolls are the key things for that. Not only that, but the bad guys that you've got as well. So I've got the Ratchet Lady out here. They've got increasing strength. The more victims that they kill, then what happens is their threat or their bloodlust level goes up, and that increases how far they can move. It increases their attack strength. It starts unleashing dark powers and does other things for them as well. And you're going to do that throughout the game. So as you are potentially getting weaker because you've taken some hits, but your hand is potentially getting stronger because you've got some items that might help. For example, Heather, who I'm using at the moment, has got a bone saw. Then you're getting slightly stronger in that respect, but your enemy, the main bad person or main bad guy, is getting stronger as the game goes on. They're moving further, they're attacking harder. That creates this real element. You've got this puzzle that's happening about what is important to me. Do I save victims? Because the more victims I save, the more potential upgrades I can get, or my character gets stronger, more health I can get back, and I get to flip it over, the character card over, to access their special ability. Or do I go for the bad guy and try and start chipping away at that now before they get too strong before the end of the game? It creates a really nice tension-filled game for you, and I think that's really good. It's a relatively simple rule set, as I say. It's adaptable for the various scenarios, so each scenario and each bad person or bad guy will add their own set of rules tweaks in there, but it makes for a wonderful kind of tension build game. So that's why you might like it. If you like an element of chance, you like building tension, you like increasing threat and dread, then it could be for you. It may not be for you if dice play is just not on your card at all. Some people just don't like dice play. They like things a little bit less random, a little bit more deterministic. They like to plan for something and watch that come to fruition as a move. That does not happen in Final Girl. Almost everything that you do is going to be governed by these dice, and they are utterly punishing at times as well. You know, I've had very strong starts to games and then found it fall apart, right, you know, kind of in the second third, and it's been hard to get back into any position where I could win. And sometimes that can happen. The game can be very, very swingy. You can, just based on the dice that you're pulling out, it means that your game can be over too quickly, either one way or another. Is that you can just roll right and you can destroy everything, do everything you need to do, or you can roll wrong consistently, and just the game doesn't go for you and you can die fairly quickly. You know, yes, it's mitigable with everything that you do with the cards, and that's a big thing of what you've got to do here, is kind of understanding what cards you want to use, what cards you want to spend to get more time back so you can spend on a more expensive card the next time. So So, you know, it is mitigable, but, you know, the element of randomness is huge in this game. It is absolutely huge. You will devise strategies for each of the scenarios and each of the bad guys, but you are going to be at the whims of these dice. And if that very large element of potential swinginess and luck that comes from dice isn't for you, then Final Girl is probably not going to be for you. As I say, for me, love it because it's got that element of chance. It harkens back to all of the great 80s horror films that I've watched, and where things never go kind of the heroine's way, if you like. So it harkens back to that, and things can go bad, but it does mean that the game can swing quite wildly from one game to the next, and you do have to be aware of that. So that was point number 3. Now let's talk about point number 4, which is the rulebook. So the rulebook itself that comes with the game is some kind of 33 pages long, lots of illustrations in there, walking you through how to set the game up and how to perform your actions and what to do in the game and exactly what happens when the minions or the killer is taking their turn as well. And once you get those rules down, it goes really, really quickly. It's a very comprehensive rulebook. I had no problems actually learning the game after a read through of this. You know, played a game, read it through, played a game, probably played a little bit of it incorrect, read it again, or skimmed through it again, got the rules right, and then absolutely went into it. And I think that's really important when you go for a solo-only game, is you've got to make sure that the rules are clear and concise enough that a solo player can absolutely nail them as quickly as possible. Because as solo gamers, we don't have that ability to potentially bounce rules off other people, or other people say, actually, I don't think that's right because I read that in the rulebook. Yes, we can go on forums or BGG if we get stuck on anything, but in reality, sometimes with the solo games, is we interpret a rule wrong at the beginning and it stays with us every time we play that game. So getting the rulebook is absolutely fantastic. I'll say the core box that you have to play the game comes with the core rule sets, and that tells you everything you need to know about playing the game. But what also happens as well is that every killer and every scenario and every map that you're playing on has its own set of rules, and they're going to get tweaked ever so slightly. And that is a really interesting concept, because the core gameplay on its own, the core rules on its own, if you're just playing a box without any additional rules, is probably just not enough to maintain people's interests. What you don't want is playing exactly the same game and just having slightly different killer on there or a slightly different scenario. So having these rules tweak sheets is really, really good. Now each box comes with its own kind of couple of flyers that you can get that has these rules tweaks in there, but not to fret. I mean, these are a bit of a pain story in the boxes, but not to fret, because what happens is that if you've got some of the extras, I think it's in the bonus features here, is you get a rule book in here, which will not only, there we go, you get a separate feature rules, a feature film rule book, which takes these sheets and put them all into rule book form there. So if you've got that, that's really handy. If you haven't, you're going to have to work from that sheet there and from the main rule book and the sheet that comes with each game. However, as I say, those little rules tweaks that you get, they really help to add to the game, and that helps keep each game feeling fresh, because as I say, you're going to mix and match those monsters. So in terms of nailing the rules, I think AJ and Evan have done a fantastic job in creating a rule book that doesn't create any amount of confusion. You can read it, set the game up, and start playing it fairly quickly. Just make sure you go back and kind of check those things. So yeah, those rules are really, really good. But why might the rules not be for you? Well, it's the complete antithesis of what I've just said, is that some people just want to play from a core set of rules, and adding all of these different rule sets can feel slightly confusing for people as well, because you've got to make sure not only you're remembering how to play the game, but you're also throwing kind of outliers in there as well with the changes in rules. And there can be a number of things. It can be additional cards, it can be what happens on the board, how victims react, how the killers react, whether they got minions or not, or even these little kind of on this one, there's some pills on this one that you have to collect, and you can spend them as well. So they add additional things in there, and that, you know, is not going to be for everybody as well, because of the fact that some people don't have time to read, you know, because we don't always play all games all the time, so it may be months before you come back to Final Girl, and then what you've got to do is potentially relearn the rules and also throw in some of these other rules as well. Some are more complex than others as well, and depending on whether you've done your research or not, if you choose the wrong feature film box and it can add an element of difficulty on there that's not great for you. So that is, rules. I love them. I think they work. They're absolutely fantastic. They do exactly what they do from a solo perspective. Having these additional modifiers really, really helps the game. But if you're looking for a game where you just want to learn the rules once, and you just got one rule book to look at, and you don't want to throw additional stuff in there, you're looking to kind of pull back on the potential complexity that is out there, then again, Final Guild may not be for you, because it really shines where you're adding those additional rules in from the feature film boxes. So that was point number 4. Point number 5, let's talk about the pricing model. So the pricing model is really good for Final Girl. What you will get for around about £15 is the core box. There is everything you need almost to play the game in this. This gives you all of the basic elements, the rules, the boards, etc., the dice, etc., that you need to play the game. But you cannot play the game until you buy a feature film box, and that's these here. Now, as I say, I've got everything. Well, first of all, just before we talk about that, these feature film boxes feature some of the best packaging ever. You see, each side of the feature film box is a magnetic board that you're going to use. So one side for here, we've got Hans is the Killer, and on the other side, we've got the map for Camp Happy Trails. It's an absolute masterstroke, and you would expect something like this to cost a lot more, but no. So what it is each the core box itself is around about 15 quid, and each feature film box is round about £15, and that is fantastic. That means that you don't have to buy the all-in if you don't want to. You can test the waters for around about £30. You have to get the core box, and then you can do a bit of research on which of the feature films you want to use, and you can buy that. You don't need the neoprene mats. You don't need all the additional stuff, things like, all the plastic miniatures, etc. that I've got. Everything that you need can come in 2 boxes, and that will give you a large element, a large kind of indication on whether you like the game or not for a relatively low investment. And I think that's really good, is the fact that for 30 quid or £15 per film, you can test out this game, and if you don't like it, you can sell it on, and in reality the only cost then once you've sold it on is the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold it for, and at £30 it's never going to be that big. And I think it's a really smart move by them to release each box, as each feature film as an individual box, that allows people to say, actually, I'm not interested in space, so I don't want an Alien one, but I am interested in Nightmare on Elm Street, so I want this one instead. And you get to choose that. It means that you haven't got stuff, if you're not gone all in, that you don't want to have. Of course, I've gone for all of the feature film sets and the all-ins on Series 1 and 2 and on Series 3, so I've got everything for it because I absolutely love the game and it's a personal thing for me. But if you're thinking about it and you just want to see what all the hoo-ha is about this fantastic solo game, then it's great that you can go out there, spend about £30, try it out, find out if it's for you, and then if you do like it, you can buy more and more, and you can buy all the additional stuff, obviously, on the Kickstarters as well, so things like the storage boxes and the minis if you really want to get into it. Or you can go all in from the beginning, spend your 170, 180 quid, whatever it is, for a series, and have everything that you absolutely need. So that is, I think it's a real positive in terms of the pricing model. Why is that negative then? Because again, I'm going to harken back to a lot of us. When we go in on Kickstarter, we tend to go all in. So a lot of people will potentially start to, spend their 180 quid and get a solo game and find that it's not for them. Now, again, there's a resale value on that, but it's a hefty investment for a pure solo game. So if you look like 100, whatever it's going to be, 170 quid, 340 quid, £510, there or thereabouts, if you're going for all 3 seasons of it, 500 quid. For a pure solo game is, it's a lot of money for a lot of people. If you're looking at everything that you've got here, that's more than the base game of something like Kingdom Death Monster. And Kingdom Death Monster is playable from 1 to 4 people. So it's a hefty investment. And if you're caught up in the mindset that you want to get everything for the game, it can be quite expensive, certainly if you came to it later in the party as well. So, I was in from Series 1, but if you're coming into it now and you think, I just want everything Final Girl, I want the neoprene mats, I want all the miniatures, I want all the vignettes, I want the fancy storage boxes, it's going to set you back around about £500, and that is a hefty investment. And people, unfortunately, some people can absolutely think, well, I'm not just buying a couple of boxes. I want to go all in on this, and it may not be for you because of everything I mentioned before. It could be the swingy nature of it. It could be the sheer amount of content. It could be that you play a couple of games and think, actually, this is not for me. Or it could well be that you bought it and you just thought, I want to try solo games. If that's the case, then don't go for the big boxes. Go and find a core box. Go and find one of the the feature films and test it out. But don't be enticed if the thought of spending 170, 340, 500 pounds on a complete set of Final Girl feels daunting for you. Then you don't have to do it that way. I think Ryder Games. You will be able to buy stuff online. You will be able to increase your collection and adapt your collection over time. But don't necessarily think that it feels like it might be a good game, or I want to give it a punt that you have to get everything, because you absolutely don't. And I understand why Ryder Games have done it, because what they've given me here is going to be a very personal fit for quite a few people, me included. The fact that this goes on display, the fact it's the perfect film set for me and the perfect setting for me, the fact it's a pure solo game, just absolutely nails it for me. But that won't be for everybody, so don't feel that you have to buy everything for Final Girl. So that's kind of it. That's 5 reasons why Final Girl may or may not be the game for you. From my perspective, as I say, I'm obviously a huge solo gamer. Tick 1. I was born in 1970. I had my teenage years in the 80s, the video revolution. I love 80s horror films. Tick 2. The presentation, everything from, as I say, how the boxes are presented, how you lay the game out, how you store everything away, just looks so thematic and on point that it becomes a focal piece and a showpiece. That when people come to my house, they instantly ask about Final Girl, about the videos I've got, etc., because it's up there on display in my living room. Tick number 3. We have the pricing model for those that want to kind of dip into it and just test it out. Tick 4, it's bloody masterstroke by AJ and Evan that's the way that they've done it. All of those things just absolutely hit the nail on the head for me. I adore Final Girl. It's one of the best pure solo games that's out there. Yes, it is pure solo. You could, I suppose, get somebody in and play it co-op and make the decisions yourself, but at heart, it's a solo game, and it's one of the best pure solo games that's out there. It speaks to me on a very, very personal level. However, if horror isn't your thing, if the overwhelming amount of content isn't your thing, that's irrespective of how good it looks on the shelves, etc. If, dice chucking, randomness isn't your thing, then Final Girl may well not be for you. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this video. Is it can be a cheap or expensive rabbit hole to go down Final Girl. You've got to remember it's pure solo. You've got to remember you don't have to have everything. But if those things are really important to you, that you like the concept, you like the gameplay, you understand that it's pure solo, you want something that really, really kind of stands out on your shelf, then Final Girl Series 1, Series 2 and Series 3 is a bit of a no-brainer. Take everything I've said with a caveat that, this works for me in so many, many ways that there's no way that I would never have everything for this game, because the gameplay stacks up for me. And as I say, the randomness, etc., is a mechanic I love hugely. So all of these things are coming from a position of bias that I love the game. As I say, it's one of the best pure solo games that's out there, nailing that 80s feel. So all of that is coming from a slight position of bias. That's why I've tried to be a little bit objective here and just say why Final Girl may or may not be for you. So the campaign is live. It's on Kickstarter at the moment for Series 3. You can get all of the stuff previously. I kind of hope this is where they wrap it up as well. I don't think there needs to be a Series 4. I think having 3 series of this is where the loop should close for me. As much as I love it, if there was a Series 4, I'm not too sure if I would then be going it all in on Series 4. I think 3 is where it should stop for me and potentially move the mechanisms and the core gameplay onto another franchise then. But yeah, I love Final Girl. one of the best pure solo games out there. For me, it's a no-brainer to back it when it comes on Kickstarter. It's not going to be for everybody, but I hope this video helps you make that choice. So, thank you very much for joining me on this video. This 5 reasons why or why not the game may be 5 reasons why or why not the game may be for you. For Final Girl, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And one final thought: if you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye bye. So, did you?